of SDL Managed Translation, this webinar will introduce the new capabilities, features, and improvements. We'll also touch on some of the updates made in the past couple of months that you might have missed. Your speaker today is Ian Parnell, Product Manager for SDL Managed Translation. With over 10 years experience in the industry, including technical support and account management roles, Ian helps his customers achieve maximum value and efficiency from their localization systems and processes. I will now pass you to Ian to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Kate, and welcome everybody to the webinar today. Thank you for joining. Before we kind of get started on the contents of the webinar, I just wanted to say a couple of things about what we're trying to achieve with the webinar session today. So we will be focusing more on features that have either been delivered very recently or features that we are about to release within the next few weeks. So we're taking quite a short-term view in terms of the topics that we're going to walk through today. Now, what we are planning to do throughout 2018 is to run similar webinars such as the one today at quarterly intervals, so following a similar structure. So we'll be repeating these sessions at regular intervals throughout next year. What I would invite you to do is to, if you have any suggestions or feedback on the structure that we're taking through the webinar today, if there's any particular content that you would like us to cover in these sessions, then please, by all means, let us know, and we can try and work that feedback into the webinars that we deliver next year. So in terms of the agenda for the webinar today, we will start by looking through some of the recent updates that we've delivered for Managed Translation and recap on some of the features that we've included as part of those updates. We will then take a look at the next release of Managed Translation, which will be the 17.12 update. We are expecting to move that into production later this week. We will then look through some of the features that are coming a little further into the future, so most likely at the start of 2018. I'd like to say a few words on the SDL community as well later on in the webinar, which some of you may already be familiar with. Others, I'd like to kind of give you a bit of an overview on what the community is and how we feel it can add value for you. And then finally, we'll open up for Q&A. So as Kate mentioned at the start of the webinar, if you have any questions as we're walking through some of the features today, please just enter a question into the Q&A box in the WebEx, and we will cover all of those at the end of the session. So let's start by looking through some of the recent features that we have delivered in Managed Translation. And we'll start by saying a few words around the online editing capability that we have introduced for client reviewers that want to work through the Managed Translation system. So we have supported an online review capability in Managed Translation for close to a year now. Now, the caveat to that, or the restriction with that, was that reviewers had to provide feedback in the form of comments. So any corrections or questions, feedback that a reviewer wanted to provide as part of their task, they had to provide that in the form of comments, and those comments were then incorporated as a subsequent step in the workflow by the translation team assigned to the project. So what we have now done in this recent update is we are allowing reviewers to edit the translated content directly if they wish to. Now, this is something that we can enable and disable on request. So if we have customers that prefer their client reviewers to work in a read-only mode, if you like, so provide comments and have corrections only implemented by the translation team, that's still perfectly fine, but we do now have that possibility of allowing reviewers to edit content directly as part of the translation workflow. As part of this feature, we also now support terminology support through the online review interface. Coming early next year, we will also have a translation memory lookup feature available through the online review interface. So this is something that we are continuing to evolve and innovate on over the course of time. In support of the new editing capability, there were a number of features that we felt it was important to offer to the reviewers as part of their duty, as part of their responsibility. So these are very specific to the tasks that a reviewer would perform. So features such as copying the source content to the target segment, the ability to apply formatting against a segment, shortcuts to allow a reviewer to go directly to a segment, and so on. So these are still implemented in quite a simple way from a UX perspective, but we're starting to kind of move towards some of the features that would be done as part of a translation task, again, now that we're able to support this editing capability through the online review interface in Mantra. So where we have a reviewer that has been granted this permission, the interface that they see has now been adapted slightly to take into account some of these more advanced features, if you like, that are available to them. If we have reviewers that still prefer, or we want them to work in read-only mode, then all of the new features that you see within the UI in here are hidden. So we're really only providing the options and the features to a user depending on what permissions they have been granted. We've also recently introduced a number of additional fields in the data export reporting that is available from Managed Translation. So the data export is a feature that we can enable for users on request. It allows those users to request an export, as you'd imagine, either in Excel format, or we also allow users to integrate from their business intelligence tool if they wish to. Now, the change that we've implemented recently is to include some additional fields that are now available for reporting. These are fields that have all been introduced as a result of feedback that we've had from customers. We've also recently added the ability for users to be more specific in terms of which files they want to download for a given project. So previously, when a user came to download the translated files from a project, they were provided with a package containing all of the files that were available at that moment in time. What this enhancement now allows a user to do is to specify which languages, which files for those given languages they want to be included in the package. So it just makes it a little bit simpler for a user to be able to ensure that they only get the files that they need at that particular moment in time. And we've implemented this in such a way that a user can only select the files that are actually available for download. So if, for example, the files that were being translated into German were still at an earlier step in the workflow, they were still going through translation, then the user wouldn't be able to physically select the checkbox for the German files at that point in time. We have also extended access in terms of how users can get to source and reference files associated with a project in Managed Translation. So there's a couple of areas in which we've made this possible, corresponding to the two screenshots that I've included in this slide. So you'll see in the top screenshot in here, this is taken from the All Projects view. Within the project tile, a user can now click on the download option and choose to download any source and reference files that are associated with that project. And they can do that at any step in the workflow. They don't have to wait for the project to reach a certain stage before they can do so. We've also allowed reviewers to access the source and reference files from within their Files for Review inbox, and also from the online review interface, which is what the second screenshot, the lower screenshot in this slide, corresponds to. So that was hopefully just a recap on the features that we have introduced over the last 4 to 6 weeks in Managed Translation, and hopefully you've already started to benefit from some of those features. Let's now just take a look at some of the features that are coming up in the next release of Managed Translation, the 17.12 update, which will be going live later this week. The main headline feature in this release is what we refer to as project templates. I'm going to break out from the slide deck in a couple of moments just to actually give you a quick demo of how the templates work and how it can hopefully improve and simplify the project creation process for you. But let me just first of all speak at a high level in terms of how the project templates work. So the intention here is twofold. We want to speed up and simplify the process of creating a new project, but we also want to reduce the risk of a human making a mistake during the project creation process. So I mean, we have customers that are using Managed Translation where their projects may contain upwards of 30 languages that they want to translate into. Now, manually having to go through and select 30 languages from a list is obviously quite error-prone, and we often see situations where we have to go in and correct a job or create a new job with missing languages. The idea that the notion of a project template is designed to prevent that. So a user that has common settings and their projects might follow a similar structure, they're able to save those settings as part of a template. So the project option, the language pairs, the attribute values, they can all be contained within a template, so when a user goes to create a new project, they can choose the appropriate template and have all of those options pre-populated in the Create Project form. As I say, we will kind of go through this in a short demo later on in the webinar. But to give you a very kind of quick idea in terms of how this is presented from a UI perspective, you'll see in the screenshot that I've included in here, there is now an additional section within the project creation form where a user can choose to create a new project based off of a template that they've created previously. I mean, what I would say about this project is it's something that's taken quite a lot of input and design consultations with our user experience team in order to get this as best as we possibly can. We wanted to make sure that in introducing this feature, we weren't kind of introducing unnecessary complexity for users when they are creating a project. So we've put a huge amount of effort into what might on the surface look like quite a small feature in terms of size. I would, as I mentioned earlier, it's always great to get feedback from people that are actually using this functionality in the real world, in production. So if, as and when you come to start using this feature and working with it, if you would like to provide us with feedback or perhaps provide us with any suggestions on how this can be improved, then it would be great to hear from you on this. Some of the other features that will be included in the next release are as follows. So it is now possible to configure the system to provide users with a detailed project quote analysis for quotes that are requested through Managed Translation. This is not something that will change by default automatically once the new version is released later this week. It is something that we can configure on your behalf if this is something that you're interested in. So the main differences with the detailed analysis is that we can now provide you with a breakdown by language and by file. So where the language breakdown is provided and included as part of your quote, you'll see the cost and word count analysis is provided for individual cost bands in here. So in the screenshot I've included to demonstrate this, you'll notice that we have multiple fuzzy cost bands in here, and for each we provide you with the cost per word that is being charged and the word count for each of those bands. Previously, or in the current version of the project quote that you will receive, those cost bands are consolidated into a single total. So that's kind of the main difference between what you have today and what we can support through the introduction of this new feature. We have also made some changes or enhancements to the way project approval can be managed in Managed Translation. The intention here really is to provide customers that are asking for it greater flexibility in terms of who can approve projects from within Managed Translation. There's a couple of common scenarios that I've heard about that have prompted us to implement this feature. So the first is where a project might be created by one user, but a different team of users should have responsibility for approving that project. So the example I would give in here is if you're working with a creative agency to create some of your content, you want that agency to actually submit or trigger the project submission in Managed Translation, but the actual budget approval should come from somebody within your organisation. So that's a scenario that we can now support. The second scenario would be that if you have multiple work streams being managed for your translation projects in Managed Translation, and for each of those work streams you have a different team of users that are responsible for the approval of those projects. So with the introduction of this new feature, that's something that we can now support in Managed Translation. And if a user ends up in a situation where for a given project they aren't assigned to the approval for that project, or they don't have the permission to approve that project, then as you'll see in the screenshot here, that user will be prevented from clicking on the approve button for that project, and they will be provided with a message to indicate why that approve button isn't available to them. Okay, so at this point what I would like to do is just walk you through the project template functionality that I talked on earlier that will be available in the next update of Managed Translation. So I'm going to just start by creating a project in the current way. So this is how you would normally go about creating a project based on the current functionality. So let's, for example, say we wanted to send a translation request for a press release that was due to go out later this month. We would provide a project name, we would enter a description if it was necessary, and we would specify a due date. If we ignore the project template section just for now, because what I'm going to do is create a new template to demonstrate how that would be done. So I would choose my project option that was relevant for this project. I would enter my source languages. I would enter a number of languages that I wanted to translate into. Fields that you see in here are custom fields, which will be different for each customer's instance of Managed Translation. So in my particular environment, I'm asked to provide a cost center number. So all of my press releases, the budget comes out of a particular cost center and against a specific purchase order number. So I would select those from the pick list. And I would then choose my department field, which again is custom for my instance, and I would indicate whether desktop publishing was required. So I'd go through the standard process of creating my project, entering the information as appropriate. Now what I can now do prior to actually creating my project is choose to create a new project template. Okay, and when I do so, I am prompted to enter a name for the template. So let's give this a name quickly. Make sure we can spell correctly, and then we can save the template, and this will now be available for future projects that I were going to create. So let's just complete the process of creating my project here. And let's just imagine a scenario now. A couple of days later, we need to go in and create a new translation project for a further press release. We're going to go back into the Create a Project page. We're going to enter our project name as normal. So let's say we wanted to prepare a project for a press release that was going to be sent out in January, in next month. Again, we provide a description if we wanted to and specify a due date. Now, instead of going through all of the additional fields in here from scratch and entering the project option, choosing the source and target languages, what I can do is say that I want to use a template for this project, and I can then select from a list of the project templates that I've created previously. So I will now go and choose my corporate newsletters project template, and as you can see, all of the fields in the remainder of the form have been pre-populated based off of what I stored within my template. Okay, so hopefully this will prove to be quite a useful feature for customers that, as I say, have common repeating projects that they have to send through the managed translation system. Okay, at this point, let me return to my slides, and the final feature that I just wanted to give you a heads up on is something that we are currently working on that will be available, we estimate, from the beginning of next year. So this is a feature that has been requested on several occasions now from various customers. Again, it's something that we are quite excited about. We think this will add a lot of value into the managed translation system. So what this feature will allow you to do is perform a search against any of your translation memories that are configured within your instance. So you'll see from the screenshot, which I should point out is a mock-up, and as with any change or any kind of feature of this nature that's going through the development process, there may be slight changes that we decide to implement prior to release. But for indication purposes, you will see that within the page, you can enter a string that you wish to search for, choose the project option that you want to search within. So what we will actually do is we will look within any translation memories that are associated with your project option. You would specify the source and target languages that you wanted to search within, specify the match percentage that you wanted to limit your search results to, and specify how many results you would like to be returned if available. And to the right of the screen in here, you will then see that the results include obviously the source string that you searched for and the target string that we found in your TM, along with the corresponding language representing that target string. Where a match less than 100% has been found, we will indicate or attempt to indicate within the results why a penalty was applied. So it could simply be because the text contained within the source string was a slight difference, a mismatch in the text that we're searching for. It could be that one of your translation memories has a penalty applied to it. So all of this information will be provided and contained within the search results that you see from this feature. And then finally, there are some additional fields that we will make available for each of the results that are provided. This represents the segment history for each of the results that are returned, so you can see when it was created in the TM, when it was last updated, and we'll also have some information in here to show how segments have been used. Before we hand over to Kate and we look through some of the questions that have been raised, I just wanted to kind of say a few words about the SDL community site that we have in place for managed translation. This is something that, I personally have invested quite a lot of time in this over the past few months. We've tried to expand and grow the level of content that we are making available through the community. We're creating different types of content, hopefully for the benefit of customers, so you can see what the features are that we're currently working on. You will also get to hear about any product updates in the community. There is a section in the community where you can submit ideas for product features. A lot of the features that I've talked through in this presentation today were actually raised initially through the community. So we do take this very seriously. We want this to be as interactive a forum as possible for our customers, and we start to see quite a big uptake in terms of the number of customers that have registered and signed up for the community. We have also recently launched a YouTube channel for the SDL community. We have started to create a number of videos for each of the features, or for some of the features that we are releasing within the product. So in the next couple of days, you will notice, you'll see that we have created a video to walk through the project template feature that I demonstrated earlier, and we'll do similar for other features that we work on throughout the course of next year. So I would strongly encourage you, if you're not already, to sign up to the community. And as I say, if you have any feedback, if there's anything you would like us to include on the community, if there's any type of content or any topics, subjects you would like us to cover, then please get in touch with us, and I'm more than happy to consider any of those suggestions. So just in terms of the release schedule for the features that I have spoken about today, we have a number that are already available and have been included in some of the recent updates for managed translation. So the online editing capability for client reviewers is already available. The data export enhancements that we talked about, the ability to download by language and file, and then the extended access to source and reference files. They are all available today. Coming up later this week, we will be shipping the project template feature. The detailed project quotes becomes available. As I mentioned, you won't notice any immediate change prior to the release of that feature. If it's something you're interested in finding out more about, then please get in touch with us, and that's something we can configure for you. And also the project approval extensions to determine which users, which teams have the ability to approve projects within the system. And then coming up in Q1 next year, hopefully towards the start of Q1, we will have the TM search feature available in production. So with that, let me hand back to Kate, and we can see if any questions have been coming through via the WebEx.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Ian, for presenting on the topic. So, as Ian said, we're now going to open up for the Q&A session. To ask a question, please do drop this into the Q&A panel on the right-hand side of the screen. A few have started to drop in, so I will get started straight away, Ian. One of the first questions is, are there any further releases planned this year following the update later this week?
Thanks, Kate. So the release that we have planned later this week is almost certainly going to be the last release of the year. The reason behind that, as with most technology organisations, there will be a change freeze enforced on us by our cloud operations team. that takes effect from the middle of December through to the second week in January. So it just ensures that while a number of people, or more people than normal, are taking holidays over the festive period, it just means that we're reducing the risk of issue in our hosted infrastructure. So the next release is likely to be the last one this year. The next is going to follow early in January, probably towards the middle of January.
Fantastic. Next question that's coming in. I really like the video that you created as part of the online editing feature. So that's some great feedback there. Is this something you plan to do more of in the future? I think you touched on that a little bit in the presentation.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, we created a video in support of the online editing functionality a couple of weeks ago now. We've had some really good feedback on that. I think customers, users appreciate being able to look at something that's relatively short in nature. I think the video was only around 2 minutes, 2.5 minutes long, but it gave a pretty good introduction in terms of what functionality, what features were available for online editing. So we will be doing similar initiatives in the future. As I mentioned, we have a video that we're planning to publish to the community, to our YouTube channel later this week in support of the Project Templates feature. We will continue to do that throughout the course of next year, as and when we feel that a feature will benefit from having a supporting video to accompany it. So, and what I would just kind of add on that, if there are topics, if there are areas of the system that you think would be suited to this type of video, then again, please get in touch with us, and we're happy to kind of consider those and see if that's something that we can help with.
Lovely, great, thanks, Ian. And another question that's just popped in on the chat around project templates. Can I share project templates between users?
So that isn't something that we're going to be supporting initially, at least. So project templates are defined at the individual user level. So as you saw when I demoed this functionality earlier, I can create my own project template at the point that I go in and create a new project. That template is associated only with my user accounts, and we don't currently allow a user to then share that template with other users. And what we've tried to do is make it absolutely as simple as we possibly can for a user to create a template. I mean, as you saw, there are very few clicks that are required to create a new template, and once you have that template, it's available for you to reuse for any subsequent projects that you need to create. So the overhead in actually creating these project templates is minimal. Having said that, if we start to get feedback once this feature is live that the option of sharing a template might add value, then of course we're open to considering that. But for now, templates are specific to individual users.
Lovely, thanks for that explanation, Ian. Another question just dropped in. Will the online editor be developed to be used for translators for functionality in the future versus customer reviewers?
Yes, that's a good question. Thank you for raising that one. So the online editing functionality that we support today, as mentioned, is very much targeted at users that are assigned to a review function or a review role within the system, whether that be in a read-only capacity or where we're happy for reviewers to go in and edit translations directly. What we do intend to do into 2018 is extend the Managed Translation online review functionality or online editing functionality to support translators that wish to work in an online environment. So yes, I can't be too specific right now in terms of when that will be available, but we're talking in the first half of next year. So I would imagine that by the time we have the first webinar or the first quarterly webinar next year, I'll be able to give you some more information on when the online interface, the online editing interface, will be available for translators to use if they wish to.
Great, thank you very much, Ian, and thank you for all those questions. I'm going to wrap up the webinar, so thank you for everyone who participated there. So just to say thank you very much for attending the webinar today. We hope you found it useful and informative. As mentioned earlier, we will be sharing the recording of this presentation, which will include a link to the SDL Managed Translation community group, so you can continue to share feedback and ideas, as well as keeping up to date with the latest product features and information. We will also include on our recording communication a link to Ian's email address, iparnell@sdl.com, so feel free to reach out to him directly if you have any other ideas or feedback about these sessions or managed translation itself. So now, just to say, have a great rest of the day, and thank you very much for attending.